Welcome to EPG Patashala. I am Professor G. Vedaparayana, retired from the Department of Philosophy, SV University, Tirupati. Today, I am going to take up the paper Indian Religion and Philosophy, and in this, I am going to give you a lecture on the lesson entitled Jiddu Krishnamurti. Jiddu Krishnamurti is one of the important contemporary Indian philosophers who belongs to South India, particularly to a town called Madanapalli. He was born there. And of the famous contemporary Indian thinkers like Aurobindo, Vivekananda, Gandhi, and Tagore, many others, Krishnamurti is also a very prominent thinker who has influenced not only Indian people, he has influenced the people all over the world, and also the great philosophers, the great scientists, and the social scientists or physical scientists have been influenced by Jiddu Krishnamurti. Therefore, it is very important to know something about the philosophy of J. Krishnamurti. And the learning objectives are as follows. First, we will deal with his birth and childhood, then philosophy, what is philosophy according to him, then choiceless awareness, then another topic is objective is thought and truth, then knowledge and wisdom, art of living, human relations, individual and society, nature and environment, and last but not the least, but very important, is what is education according to J. Krishnamurti. So regarding birth and childhood, Krishnamurti was born in 1895 in Madanapalli, Chittoor district, South India, and he was discovered to be the human vehicle of the coming of the Messiah by the Theosophists. Adopted by Dr. Annie Besant, he was proclaimed to be the Maitreya, otherwise known as Bodhisattva, and taken in his astral body to the masters believed to be living in Tibet in their astral bodies. The boy Krishnamurti received a message from these masters, and he composed a book called The Art of, at the feet of the master. He was renowned as a world teacher, and an organization was formed by name the Order of the Star of the East in Theosophical Society. So his birth is a very peculiar birth. He was delivered by his mother in the puja room, expecting that this child would become a very great man, and to the expectations of his mother, who died just a few days after his birth, the Krishnamurti became a very famous philosopher or thinker under the guidance of Theosophists like Annie Besant and another person of clairvoyant powers by name Leadbeater. Then Krishnamurti underwent a psychological process that revealed to him the eternal truth, joy and beauty. And his younger brother Nityananda died of tuberculosis when he was abroad. The event dejected him very deeply and transformed his sorrow at the death of his brother into compassion. Then he disbanded the Order of the Star of the East and declared that he maintained that truth is a pathless land. So this is a very significant event that has taken place in his life. That is, the Theosophists wanted him to groom as the world teacher, or as the second coming of the Christ, or also as the next avatar of Krishna. But after having been there for nearly 15 to 20 years under the guidance of the Theosophists, Krishnamurti lost all faith in Theosophy. He also lost faith in the so-called masters that were believed to be in Tibet, and because particularly his brother's death created some doubts about the theosophy and the leaders of theosophy, and therefore he became very, very dejected at the death of his brother. And he asked himself the question, how is this my brother dies when these theosophists are saying that there are some masters and they are protecting me? Therefore, he got terribly dejected, and he concentrated on his sorrow. Why this sorrow is there? How to overcome this sorrow? Then somehow some process, psychological change began to take place in him, and his sorrow at the death of his brother, it transformed itself into a kind of deep compassion for human beings and for the all other beings and the world. So this is the great transformation that has taken place in J. Krishnamurti, which is similar to that of Buddha. Buddha also got transformation because he felt that there is everything is sorrow. Krishnamurti also felt that there is some kind of sorrow which is all pervading, and therefore I should not become a victim to this sorrow again and again. I must find the secret or the causes of this sorrow and overcome it. So it has happened in Krishnamurti just as it happened in Buddha in ancient times. Then what happened? He resigned from theosophy and became an independent thinker. He dedicated his life for spreading the message of truth, and more than 40 books he has compiled out of his talks and authored himself a few books. So Krishnamurti is the seer who walked on this earth very lightly and alone and died in 1986. So this is another important event that is important to note is Krishnamurti came out of theosophy and he became a thinker without any identification. He doesn't want to be identified with any organization, with any religion, and therefore he wanted to be a simple individual thinker without any labels on him. And he declared in the last lecture in theosophy, a lecture of resigning to Theosophical Society, and he made a famous statement or famous lecture, of which the same famous statement is, I declare that I want to unconditionally and absolutely free human beings from sorrow and unhappiness. So now we go to another important objective of Krishnamurti is, what is philosophy according to Krishnamurti? Before defining what is philosophy according to Krishnamurti, we have to now concentrate on what philosophy is not according to Krishnamurti. So philosophy is not a conceptual or a speculative activity of dealing with abstract ideas. It is not an argumentation of proving or disproving or justifying or denouncing anything. Nor is it a pursuit of convincing people of one's conviction or one's dogma. It is neither exegetical nor hermeneutical. It is also not an interpretation of a text or the life world. It is also not a construction of grand eloquent theories, nor is it a destruction of these theories. It is not a body of justified true beliefs, not a series of theories of successive reform. It is not even eclecticism of borrowing and reconciling the prevalent ideas. So these are the concepts of philosophies that Krishnamurti is denying, because these are the prevalent conceptions that are there in the departments of philosophy or in the minds of philosophers who have given various kinds of conception of philosophy. And we have to be very clear that Krishnamurti does not subscribe to any of these conceptions of philosophy. It is not an argumentation, it is not an interpretation, it is not proving or disproving any idea, it is not convincing anybody of his own ideas or influencing other people. Then philosophy is not also a defensive strategy. It is not a pastime of strong minds. It is neither a partisan position of committing oneself to a particular view. It is not a cynical or skeptical attitude of doubting everything. Much less, philosophy is not a capacity of the mind for resting contentedly in endless contradictions. It is not also grappling with the specialized technical problems of metaphysics, epistemology, logic, and ethics. It is not raising the contentious issues of realism, idealism, skepticism, or solipsism, and so on. Which means Krishnamurti as a philosopher is not trying to establish any system. He is not trying to establish any theory, either realism or idealism. So many other kinds of isms are there. So Krishnamurti's philosophy does not accept any ism. It is criticizing the isms. It is criticizing the ideologies, theories, liberating the mind from all these theories or conceptions. It is not even a logical or analytical search for linguistic meaning and clarity. It is not even investigation into the logical rules governing linguistic expressions. Not even existential or phenomenological demonstration of the tragic finale of life. But Krishnamurti's philosophy is aiming to bring about a radical psychological transformation in the human being. It is aimed at inward transformation, which alone can decisively save us from the impending dangers like nuclear or environmental holocaust. Inward change is instantaneous and not evolutionary. Immediate insight into the fact of division leads to radical transformation of the mind. So, positively speaking, philosophy according to Krishnamurti is to bring about inward change of the human being or psychological change in the human being. It is also otherwise known as to bring about a silent revolution in the human being, in the mind of the human being itself, because he believes that the conditioned mind is responsible for all problems that are there in my life or in our life and in society. Unless the mind is transformed, the society cannot be transformed, my life cannot be changed. So, radical psychological transformation, he says. What do you mean by radical psychological transformation? Means total, deep, fundamental transformation in the mind of the individual or in the consciousness of the individual is required to create a better society, to create a better world. So for this, we will go to next objective, wherein we see the choiceless awareness as the means of bringing about this change. What is this choiceless awareness? Choiceless awareness is seeing what is as it actually is. Perception of a fact without an idea, a conception or knowledge about it. Choiceless awareness is observation without division as the observer and the observed. It is also awareness without justification or condemnation, identification or exclusion. Awareness is not a concentration, it is not focusing of thought in a particular direction on a particular object. Nor is awareness an analysis, a step-by-step examination of what is. No, it is not evolutionary, it is not analytic. Awareness is an undivided, holistic attention of the totality of what is. So, just as we saw in the case of what is philosophy, here also in the case of awareness or choiceless awareness, Krishnamurti is first of all clarifying what choiceless awareness is not. Then he comes to what is choiceless awareness. So, it is not an analytical or dissection of what we are facing, of the problem. but it is only a silent observation of the problem without thinking, without time, without interpretation, without division. Again, awareness is observing with one's whole being and one's whole energy and with diligence, love and care. See, he is ascribing all these characteristics to awareness itself. If you are saying that you are aware of something or if you are observing something, it means there should be care, diligence, love and also whole of your energy, the whole of your being should be there, which means undivided attention to what is happening in yourself or undivided attention to what is happening outside alone will reveal the truth of what you are observing. Again, it is giving freedom to what is and allowing it to flower and reveal its story. Again, choiceless awareness brings about the insight which reveals the truth of the fact. This observation without observer brings about a deep mutation in the brain cells itself. What is mutation? Mutation is fundamental change, radical change in the brain cells itself. This is the very important thing which scientists also have subscribed to what Krishnamurti is saying, that yes, if there is undivided attention in oneself, about oneself or about any fact, then there takes place a deep change in the mind or in the psyche or in the consciousness of the individual. So observation without observer brings about a mutation in the observed. To be aware of oneself, the whole of one's consciousness without choice, brings about a fundamental inner transformation. This is also called mutation in the brain cells themselves, and it affects the whole consciousness of humanity. This is the important point that Krishnamurti is talking about. Why choiceless awareness is required means our consciousness is a conditioned consciousness. This consciousness has a content. What is this content? This content is what has been accumulated all through the ages in my mind or in my life, what I have acquired and stored in my brain. Therefore, my brain or my consciousness is not empty to observe anything as it is, but it is full of past, full of memories, full of experiences, full of thought process. That is why it is having so much of content that has to be eliminated and that has to be emptied from my consciousness or mind. And this is possible only when there is choiceless awareness about my consciousness. So the next objective regarding Krishnamurti's philosophy is thought and truth. We have to be very clear about what thought is, what truth is according to Krishnamurti. So thought according to Krishnamurti is the response of memory to a challenge, or it is a response to the movement of the past. It is always conditioned by and dependent on the past. Which one? The thought. So thought is the product of the past, which is also a result, and thought is a material process, and because it is the memory in which it is anchored, because memory is also matter, and memory is matter since it is stored in the brain, which is the material substance. So it is very important to be very clear about Krishnamurti's very revolutionary statement that he is saying thought is a material process. He is saying thought is matter. We think that matter means that is there outside only in the form of a substance. But according to Krishnamurti, even thought is a material process. Why thought is a material process? Because it is based on memory. Without memory, thought cannot function, thought cannot exist, thought cannot work. And what is memory? Memory is the past that is stored in the brain cells. The memory is matter because it is there in the brain cells, which are material substance. Brain is a material substance, and whatever is there recorded in the brain also is matter according to Krishnamurti. And because thought arises out of this memory, thought is also a material process. Therefore, we should not give too much of importance to thought. Thought is a limited process. Therefore, we have to control thought or limit thought to the realm of strict physical requirement. Again, there is nothing sacred about thought. This is what Krishnamurti says. Thought at all levels is temporal, a passage of the past to the future. It is the activity of thought is divisive and fragmentary and involves contradiction and conflict. It functions by dividing itself as thinker and thought. The so-called thinker, the self, is not different from thought itself. The thinker is only a refuse, a residue of thought. See, we have the tendency that there is thinker who is different from thought. But Krishnamurti very clearly, shows that this so-called thinker is also a process of thought. We are thinking that thought is different and thinker is different. No. According to Krishnamurti, there is no thinker, there is only process of thinking. Therefore, it is wrong to divide thought as thinker and thought. There is only process of thought. It is also a material process. And if you say that there is thinker, it is only an extension of thought and it is also a material process. And thought manifests itself as the thinker only to give itself some kind of continuity. Thought remains to be finite and cannot free from the moorings of the past. The whole realm of thought, Krishnamurti calls it a reality. Reality of thought may be factual or illusory, and thought is factual when it reflects a fact as it is and it in a straight way, and it is illusory or fictitious when it reflects a fact in a distorted manner. So another important point that Krishnamurti is making here is while saying that thought is a material process, he is at the same time saying that it is also a reality. Thought is a reality because whatever thought thinks about, whatever thought touches, that becomes a reality, which means he is trying to again differentiate this reality, which is the product of thought, from truth, which is entirely different from the reality that is constructed by thought. That is what we are going to see. Now, truth, how is it different from thought? Let us see it. Truth is totally outside the field of thought. Truth is when thought is not. Thought is a thing, whereas truth is nothing. Nothing means not a thing. That is, in truth, there is not a thing that is put together by thought. Thought is conditioned, whereas truth is absolutely and unconditionally free. Truth has nothing to do with memory. True mind in the present comprehends truth. See, this is how Krishnamurti differentiates between truth and thought. Thought is always of something. If I say that I am thinking, it means that you are thinking about something. You are thinking of something. There can be no thought without the object of thinking. But truth is independent of everything. It is not dependent on anything. And what is the state of mind of truth? The state of mind of truth is nothing. Nothing means there is nothing in the sense there are no thoughts in the mind which is of the nature of nothing. And that is a true mind, or that is truth. Truth is always of nothing. Thought is always of something. So this is how Krishnamurti makes a distinction between truth and thought. Where there is thought, there is no truth. Where there is truth, there is no thought. Where there is nothing, there is not anything else. There is only nothing, there is no something. Again, he makes another distinction between thought and truth is, thought is always of tradition. It is continuous, whereas truth is eternal and from moment to moment. Devoid of any center or circumference, truth is boundless and infinite. And truth is the energy which is immense. And this energy is without beginning and end. And this energy which is of truth is creative and ever expanding. It is not divisive but holistic and immeasurable. Truth which is intrinsically intransient and immaterial. See, we have seen the characteristics of thought. Thought is material, finite, temporal, it is of the nature of the past and all that. But whereas truth is immeasurable. You can't say what is truth, but you have to only experience it. Thought cannot touch truth. It can only say something about it, but thought itself cannot become truth. And truth is always beyond time and beyond thought, beyond space. At the same time, it is an immeasurable energy. You can't, a mind which is of the nature of truth is infinite and immeasurable, and we can also say that it is eternal. So thought can never touch the sacred, the incorruptible truth. Thought can never relate itself with the truth. Truth relates itself without, truth can relate itself with thought, but thought cannot relate itself with truth. So devoid of the light of truth, thought goes berserk, which means it gets confused because thought by itself has no clarity. So what we need is truth and actuality, the reality as truly reflected by thought. See, here we have to be very clear about the words that Krishnamurti is using. That is actuality and reality and truth and thought. What is actuality? Actuality is that which truth can perceive. And what is reality is? Reality is that which is under control of thought, then which becomes an actuality. So what we require is truth and actuality, and reality confined to the realm of physical activity. When it comes to the psychological activity, what we require is truth and actuality. When we come to material world, what we require is truth and reality. And thought, if it becomes independent of itself, it gets into confusion. It should always be guided by truth. If thought is under the control of truth, then it will not create problems to human being or to the society. If there is completely no understanding of truth, only there is thought, thought does innumerable things which creates problems to us. Then another objective that we are going to deal with here is another important objective, that is knowledge and wisdom. So knowledge is the process of thinking, experience or consciousness. Knowledge is also thought, experience, memory stored in the brain. It is of two kinds. That is, knowledge is of two kinds, factual and psychological. Factual knowledge is of instrumental value, which is essential for our physical security. It is, factual knowledge is information useful for our daily life, like speaking a language or going to the moon with the scientific discoveries and technologies. The result of thought functioning in the world of facts and actualities. So, here we have to be clear about the distinction of the thought which is factual and psychological. Knowledge which is factual and psychological. Factual knowledge is useful for our material benefit, and knowledge which is at the psychological level is very harmful. We should not take into consideration knowledge at the psychological level. because as we have already said, at the psychological level, there should be nothing in the mind. It should be empty of all knowledge, all past, all the process of thought, because knowledge is only a process of thought. When we say at the psychological level there should be no thought process, it automatically means that there should be no knowledge at the psychological level. Only at the physical level knowledge is required. So psychological knowledge is a fabricated knowledge by thought, and it is gathered for inward security, which is not possible like that. The result of thought functioning in a crooked way at the psychological level, and also the result of thought using at the factual level is for self-aggrandizement. The conglomeration of several desires, motives, beliefs, images and symbols is knowledge at the psychological level. It embodies ambitions, envy, hatred, anger, fear, sorrow, division and conflict. Psychological knowledge constitutes consciousness, which can be called the psyche or the self. It sustains, what psychological knowledge sustains self continuously by generating its own energy out of self-contradiction. So this is another important point that we have to make note. Knowledge at the psychological level creates the self, creates the psyche, which I say my. So this is there because we accumulate knowledge at the psychological level. This is also called the psyche or consciousness of the individual, which is the source of all problems, which is the source of all crises. So therefore Krishnamurti says we should not have knowledge at the psychological level, because it makes the individual self-centered, divisive, conflicting and violent. And some more points with regard to this knowledge at the psychological level is, psychological knowledge comprising the self is positively a barrier to wisdom. No wisdom can be there as long as there is the self-centered conscious activity of knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is a flash of light between two darknesses. Known can never know the unknown. Knowledge is not the coin for the purchase of wisdom. Knowledge, ancient or sophisticated, can never evolve into wisdom, cannot evolve or can never evolve into wisdom. Gathering knowledge through time and effort as a means of wisdom is wrong. All time has to cease for the timeless to be. See, there is a general understanding or misunderstanding that if I become highly knowledgeable, if I accumulate knowledge by reading books or sacred books and listen to many lectures and all that, I will become wise. But Krishnamurti is saying accumulation of knowledge, either very sophisticated knowledge, very ancient knowledge, very traditional knowledge, I mean filling your brain or consciousness with this kind of knowledge and ideas about wisdom is not wisdom. Wisdom means is an entirely different state of mind. It is not an accumulation of knowledge. Then what is wisdom? So wisdom is the nothingness of the mind. It is beyond all accretions that the mind has gathered. It is also nothingness, which is what we actually are. Wisdom lies in being nothing, without knowing it, without reducing it to knowledge. Wisdom means freedom from the known. Known also means knowledge. To know is to be ignorant, and not to know is to be wise. Wisdom is a state of not knowing. It is a state of being without becoming. So these are the characteristics that Krishnamurti is giving to wisdom. So wisdom is a state of not being. It is a state where there is no becoming, there is no longing, there is no ambition to become this and that. There is no struggle to become this and that. There is a calm existence which is able to observe everything that is there around. Because state of wisdom is a state of being nothing, completely nothing, which is the actual state of our being. If somebody asks me, what is your actual state of being? What is your actual nature? A wise man says, I am nothing. He will not say that I am an Indian, I am this and that, I belong to this place, because state of wisdom is such a thing that it has, gone beyond all limitations. No space, no time, no name, no identity. So therefore, a really wise man says, I am nothing. Nothing also is not just emptiness. Nothingness means is everything is there in that. It is a state of full energy. And with this, we go to the next objective that is very interesting and very important. That is art of living. What does Krishnamurti say about this art of living? So art of living is the greatest of all arts. Like writing a poem, painting pictures. Living and dying from moment to moment without any residue or continuity of the past is art of living. Again, art of living is to die and not to record, not to accumulate knowledge at the psychological level. Each moment of perception is new. The first step is the last step in the art of living. And art of living also means that death is not merely at the end of life. It is not the extinction of the body. Death is also the ending of oneself at the psychological level, at inwardly. So art of living, according to Krishnamurti, is living and dying from moment to moment without accumulation of any memory or past. This is the important thing. Art as it is for Krishnamurti doesn't mean it is writing a poem or painting a picture or doing some artistic activities. Art according to Krishnamurti means art of living, which is more important. Art of living is the highest or the greatest of all arts. This is what he said. And everything on this earth lives and dies. We have to die each day, each moment, and live afresh and anew. Death is not a sad affair. It is not something to be avoided. It is ecstatic moment to live with day in and day out. Living with death has an extraordinary sense of immensity and it has extraordinary meaning. Living without dying is dreadful, whereas living in dying is beyond time and sorrow. Art of living is the resilience of the mind to renew itself each moment. So Krishnamurti is saying, art of living means you are every moment living and dying, living and dying. But whereas we are afraid of death and therefore we push death to the end of life, thinking that, oh, death will come only when in old age and all that. Therefore, we are always accumulating our memories, our incidents and our events, and then we are being burdened by the accumulation of memories. But actual living is possible only when you are dying at each moment. Dying at each moment means you are forgetting or you are not recording what is happening at the moment. You are living it deeply and leaving it aside, and then next moment you are again, your brain or mind is fresh to face that next moment. So therefore, living and dying should take place every moment. Then you will not be afraid of death that is coming at the end of life. We are afraid of death, physical death, because we are psychologically not dying. We are mentally not dying, but always thinking. If you can stop for a moment thinking, then you will know what is death while you are alive. Then another important objective, according to Krishnamurti's philosophy, is human relations. So what does he say about human relations? Fundamentally, to Krishnamurti, life is relationship. And this relationship is the mirror of the life world. In relationship, that we can learn what we actually are. If I want to know myself, what I am, I must observe my relationships with others, with my relationships with the things and ideas. Then only I can know what I am. I cannot know myself only if I think that I am independent of others. In my relationship with others only, I know what I am. Whether I am angry, whether I am jealous, whether I am deceptive. I come to know all these things only if I observe my relationship with my friends, kith and kin. So there is division and conflict in relationship, since these relationships are based on images. What are these images? Images are what we are thinking about myself. To say that I am an Indian, so this is an image. Or I am a great professor, this is an image that I should not have. This creates conflict in human relations. If I don't have identities like this or images like this, then I can relate myself with others without conflict, without division and without friction. So the images are responsible for the crisis in human relationships. Images continue the self, the center, which hinders harmonious relations. So self-centered activity is responsible for all kinds of problems in relationships. And images are the products of psychological knowledge and thought. So I explained, images are there because I accumulate knowledge at the psychological level. I am thinking at the psychological level. We should not accumulate knowledge at the psychological level, and we should not have thinking at the psychological level about myself or about others. Then only we can put an end to the formation of images, to the formation of identities, which are responsible for friction or problems in human relationships. So thought, now with some more points about human relationships, thought and knowledge can never give the security in human relations. Only the mind without images can relate itself with everything without friction. Only the emptiness of the mind, that there is true love. Love is of supreme intelligence, suffused with sensitivity, care and responsibility. Devoid of all images, the sensitive mind is incapable of hurting a thing, anything. Love alone can bring about a radical change in human relations and in the world. To it means to love, or for love, all are one and the whole world is its home. So Krishnamurti is bringing the emotion of love as the important factor or the essential factor that has to be there in human relations. See, love is absence of thought. It is absence of knowledge. It is a state of wisdom. One who is wise, he will love all people. And this love is holistic, not confined to only one person or one object or one class or one category or community. When there is love for all, not only to all human beings, but to entire nature. You love birds, you love trees, you love plants, you love animals, you love human beings, you love humanity as a whole. That is why Krishnamurti says, for love, all are one. And what is its home? Not its own home. Not if I am a loving being, what is my home? The entire world is my home. I don't consider my own people, my own house as my home. Then it is, connected to another objective, another important point in Krishnamurti's philosophy, that is individual and society. So, what is an individual? What is society? How we can bring about change? Let us see. Krishnamurti says, you are the world and the world is you. Society is nothing but relationships, the psychological extension of the individuals. Crises in society are due to the crisis in the consciousness of the individual. Therefore, inward division and conflict causes confusion and mess and misery in the world. Other revolutions, apart from psychological revolutions, have not brought about any real qualitative change in the world. Only a radical psychological revolution is the solution for coming out of this crisis. And instantaneous transformation in the inward being can establish the world of peace. A sane society of security and sustainability requires holistic and wise individuals. So this is what I have already said in the form of introduction, that only individual transformation, only transformation of human being brings about transformation in the world. And what kind of transformation in the individual? Psychological, inward transformation is the only revolution that is required. All other revolutions, what are the all other revolutions? Red revolution or communist revolution or green revolution or revolution in agriculture or revolution in technology and revolution in other kinds, white revolution, green revolution, red revolution, all these kinds of revolutions of different hues are not sufficient to bring about a real change in society, because unless human being radically changes, the society cannot be changed radically. Next, another important, let us briefly deal with what is nature and environment according to Krishnamurti. So, destroying nature and degrading environment is unprecedented and it is happening at an alarming rate in the modern times. It is because of utilitarian and insensitive attitude to nature. We are treating nature as merely a commodity for consumption. We are exploiting it indiscriminately. We are not using it wisely for our well-being, and we are not trying to preserve the nature for future generation. And another important cause for destruction of nature is anthropocentric outlook, and our activity like that is responsible for the ecological imbalance. Self-centered, acquisitive approach to nature is at the root of environmental crisis. So Krishnamurti is saying, we are part of nature. If we destroy nature, we are going to destroy ourselves. If there is no nature, the humanity and all other living beings will not be there. Therefore, our approach to nature should be such that we have to protect nature. We should not exploit nature. We may use nature for our physical existence, because without using nature, we cannot exist. Survival is not possible. But we should not exploit, we should not destroy, we should not treat nature as a commodity that you can take any amount of wealth, natural wealth. No, we should not. We should be limited to our needs. The greed should not be there in our relationship with nature. And also, anthropogenic or anthropocentric attitude to nature is very destructive. What is this anthropogenic and anthropocentric attitude? Means man is the center of this universe and all activities of human being are primary and nature is secondary. No, human being is not the center of this universe or nature. He is only a part of nature. We should not think that we are the masters of nature. No, we are like servants of nature. We have to obey the natural laws We have to have respect and admiration for nature. Then only we can have the benefit of nature. Otherwise, nature will destroy human beings. So, individual nations are exclusive in their approach of development, and they cause, plunder of nature. Global approach to development with a spirit of distributive justice protects nature. Destroying nature is like cutting the branch on which we are sitting. How foolish thing it is. When I am sitting on a tree, you are sitting on certain branch, and without knowing, being very foolish and ignorant, you are cutting the same branch on which you are sitting. So therefore we are part of nature, and being part of nature, you are trying to destroy nature, which means ultimately you are going to destroy yourself. That you should be very wise in your approach to nature. So it is wrong to think that we, the human beings, are the only privileged animals or privileged beings on this planet. Earth is neither for the capitalists, nor for the communists, nor for the Americans, nor for the British. It is our earth, and we all have to live on it. So nobody has the right to say that we have power over this earth, we have power over this nature, we can exploit it more than others. No, it is neither of communists, nor of capitalists, nor of British or Americans or Indians. This earth is ours, and we have to live on this earth, and nature itself is the greatest source of global outlook. Watching nature and being in communication with it brings about intelligence. Krishnamurti again says, sensitivity that puts an end to our sense of separation and destruction comes from our relationship with nature. And being very intimate relationship with nature brings about a communion with others, with this entire cosmos, and it creates intelligence in the human being. And this intelligence is the creative principle that protects humanity and nature as a whole. Intelligent person never kills anything to satisfy his tongue. He will never destroy nature to amass wealth. We are thinking that intelligence means destroying nature or having technology, inventing technology to destroy nature and get benefits out of it. No, Krishnamurti is talking about a different kind of intelligence. An intelligent human being is one who has reverence for nature, who protects nature, who will not hurt even a bird, even a leaf, even a tree or a plant that is there in nature. And the next last part of this lecture, that is last objective, is education. What Krishnamurti says about education. Let us see what he says. According to Krishnamurti, the aim of education is not merely to train the student in a particular technique for serving the society or for earning livelihood. To educate is not only to produce excellent specialists, but to create human beings of excellent conduct. And teacher has to educate the student to flower in goodness. And to be means living actively with love and affection. To be educated means living actively with love and affection without being self-centered. And to be educated means to be truly religious, which means living a life of goodness daily, not occasionally. To be educated also means to live with people, with nature, with the environment, with total peace and harmony. So these are the important points that Krishnamurti has given about education. So education is not only making us a literate or making us having degrees and also labels at the end of our names, but we should become intelligent people, wise people of good conduct and good behavior and good activity in life. And to live excellently is not living in excellent houses, eating excellent food, and driving excellent cars, but living with care and concern for nature. This is what is meant by excellence. The aim of education is to create a true human being in whom scientific temper and true religious spirit go together. True education imparts knowledge and helps the student to flower in goodness. And the teacher has to give the student freedom to flower in excellence. And student should develop the quality of mind which is intelligent and sensitive. And cultivation of sensitivity, intelligence is surely the function of any teacher or guru. So these are the important things that Krishnamurti has said about education. Teacher should treat the student with care and compassion. He should give student the freedom to flower, not only intellectually but also morally. We are suppressing the student. Therefore, students are becoming neither intellectually excellent nor morally excellent. That is the plight of the education now. But Krishnamurti is talking about that it is possible to bring about a child or to create an educated person who is not only intellectually highly intelligent, excellent, but also in behavior also he should be excellent. His conduct should be so good that he cannot create any problems to the society. So such a person alone is a really educated person. So to sum up or to give a summary to this lecture is, Krishnamurti is one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century who has offered a unique philosophy of life, philosophy of education, which is relevant for our times because the world now is in unprecedented crisis. World is having all kinds of problems. You take any problem that is there in this world. There is war in this world. There is no peace in this world. There is environmental degradation in this world. There is corruption in this world. There is communalism in this world. There is commercialization in this world. You say anything, that insecurity is there in this world. There is no security for people. So when these problems are there, if we consult Krishnamurti's philosophy, we have some kind of solution to the problems that we are facing because he is saying the solutions are there in the individual itself, because individual is responsible for all these kinds of problems that are there in the world. He has advocated a radical psychological transformation of the individual for the total transformation of the life world. He has held that crisis in the world is due to the crisis in the consciousness of humanity, not only in the individual but in the consciousness of all people, which is the same as the individual consciousness. So a real and holistic change in the world warrants a radical transformation in the consciousness of each and every individual. And education is the main source of bringing about this transformation in the individual and in the society at large. Thank you very much.